Lyra had traveled farther than any of her kind had ever gone. The stars she passed were unfamiliar. The planets she had charted were still untouched. And yet her curiosity pushed her forward. The mission was simple in name, but immense in challenge. Explore new worlds, record life, and seek signs of intelligence beyond the known reaches of her species. She had landed on this world a week ago, a planet with thick skies, glowing plants, and seas that shimmered with colors no one in her galaxy had catalogued. The air was thick and slightly sweet, almost like the scent of a forest back on her home planet, and the soil had a strange softness that sank lightly beneath her boots. Lyra moved carefully, scanning the terrain. Her scanners picked up only natural life, small creatures that darted through the glowing underbrush, plants that hummed faintly with energy, and clouds that swirled in impossible patterns above. Yet, despite the abundance of life, she felt an odd emptiness, as if something, or someone, had recently passed through. Then she saw them, footprints. At first, she thought her sensors were malfunctioning. No life form of her understanding could have left marks like these. They were bipedal, deep and precise, stretching across a narrow path through the alien foliage. Lyra crouched to study them. The shape was simple, yet unlike any she had catalogued, rounded at the front with subtle divisions that hinted at toes. Her heart raced. Humans. The species had been spoken of in stories, in historical records from the earliest explorations of space. Her kind had assumed humans were primitive, fragile, incapable of leaving their home system without massive support. Yet here were signs that a human, or maybe more than one, had walked this alien land, leaving footprints that were fresh enough to follow. Lyra's analytical mind raced. She documented every print with her tools, taking measurements, scanning for chemical residues, and marking the path on her holo map. Every instinct in her being told her caution was necessary, yet her curiosity was stronger. She had to follow. She had to see the human herself. The footprints led through a narrow valley where the plants glowed brighter, casting soft light over the uneven terrain. Lyra moved quietly, her senses alert. She noticed small signs of the human's presence beyond the prints: broken branches, a crushed patch of soft moss, faint traces of something sticky, perhaps a natural substance the human had used to mark the path. These details told her something important. The human was careful, observant, and intelligent. As she walked, Lyra thought about her own kind. Her species valued logic, technology, and control, often believing that strength was measured in firepower and knowledge in data alone. Humans, from what little she knew, seemed different. They survived in hostile environments without relying on technology as a crutch. They adapted. They learned. They thrived where others would fail. And now, evidence of such a human was before her eyes, walking across a planet no one thought they could reach. Hours passed as she followed the trail. The landscape changed from soft moss and glowing flora to jagged crystal formations that shimmered in the dim light. The footprints navigated the crystals with ease, stepping over sharp edges, adjusting stride when the terrain tilted, never faltering. Lyra was impressed. Even her most advanced explorers would have left marks of hesitation, signs of careful calculation, but not this human. Something in Lyra stirred, a sense of admiration that she rarely allowed herself. She had been trained to observe without emotion, to catalog without judgment, yet she could not help but feel a growing respect. Whoever this human was, they were remarkable. As the path climbed a gentle hill, Lyra paused. The sky above darkened slightly, the twin moons of this planet casting long, pale shadows. She crouched again to study the prints. There was something unusual, an irregularity. The steps were closer together here, as if the human had slowed, hesitated. Lyra's scanners detected faint traces of heat and chemical energy that suggested movement, but there was no sign of danger. Nothing had attacked the human. It was as if the world itself had paused. Lyra wondered what could cause such hesitation. Was the human wary of predators, or had they discovered something unexpected? Her curiosity deepened. She pressed forward, careful to stay silent. Every crack of stone beneath her feet, every rustle of glowing leaves could give her presence away. The valley ended at a strange formation, a circle of tall, crystalline spires surrounding a pool of water that shimmered with colors she could not name. The footprints led straight to the pool's edge and stopped. Lyra froze. The prints ended abruptly, as if the human had simply vanished. There was no continuation, no sign of struggle, no hint of where the person might have gone. She scanned the area, her sensors sweeping in wide arcs, picking up the faintest traces of heat, motion, or energy. Nothing. The pool's surface reflected the moons above, perfectly still. The air was quiet. The only sound was the faint hum of the crystalline spires, vibrating gently, like they were alive. Lyra stepped closer to the pool, her reflection shimmering alongside the moons. She could not explain the emptiness. She crouched again, touching the soil at the point where the prints ended. There was no disturbance, no hidden tunnel, no sudden incline, no sign of teleportation. It was as if the human had simply vanished from existence, leaving only their footprints behind. Questions raced through her mind. Was the human intelligent enough to leave the planet without leaving traces? Or had something extraordinary occurred here, something beyond her understanding? Lyra felt a mixture of excitement and unease. This was more than a discovery. It was a puzzle, a mystery waiting to be solved. For the first time in her career, Lyra felt a spark of something unexpected. Personal investment. She was no longer just an observer. She was a participant. She had to know what had happened, and she had to find the human, no matter the danger. Carefully, Lyra activated her portable scanner, sending probes into the soil, the water, and the spires. The readings were strange. Patterns of energy she had never seen before, almost like tiny pulses of life embedded in the crystal, reacting to some unknown stimulus. She adjusted her instruments, trying to interpret the signals. Could the human have interacted with the crystals? Could the footprints themselves have triggered some form of environmental response? Lyra did not know, but she felt certain of one thing. The human was extraordinary. And the human's choices, the very way they moved across this world, carried a meaning she had to understand. She took a deep breath. Her scanners would record everything. Her memory banks would store every detail, but that was not enough. She needed to see the human with her own eyes. She had to follow, even though the path ahead was uncertain, even though danger could be waiting. The sun, low in the sky, cast long shadows across the crystalline field. Lyra stepped forward, carefully placing her own feet beside the last human prints. She felt a thrill, a connection to someone she had never met. Her mind filled with possibilities. Who was the human? What were they doing here? How had they reached this remote world? Lyra's hand hovered over her communicator, ready to send a report back to her people. But she hesitated. This discovery was too important, too delicate. She could not risk interference. She had to solve this herself. And so, with careful steps and focused attention, Lyra began to follow the trail beyond the pool, hoping that the next footprint, the next clue, would tell her more. And in that moment, she felt the first stirrings of a profound truth. Humans were not merely survivors. They were explorers, thinkers, and problem solvers capable of moving through the unknown with courage and intelligence. Whatever lay ahead, she knew that following these footprints would change everything she thought she knew about life in the galaxy. The journey had begun, and Lyra had no idea where it would lead. Lyra stood at the edge of the crystalline pool, her sensors scanning for even the smallest hint of movement. The human footprints had ended here, but she was certain that the person had not vanished without reason. Her instincts told her that something extraordinary had happened, something that required patience and observation. Carefully, she adjusted her boots on the soft alien soil and began moving beyond the pool, following the faint traces of energy she hoped the human had left behind. The landscape changed quickly. The soft moss and glowing plants gave way to a thick forest of towering stalks, each crowned with luminous pods that pulsed gently like slow heartbeats. Shadows shifted in the dim light, creating strange patterns that played tricks on her eyes. Lyra's scanners detected small animals darting between the stalks, but none of them posed a threat. Yet the forest felt alive in a way she had never experienced. Watchful, almost sentient, as if it were observing her as closely as she observed it. Lyra moved quietly, stepping carefully to avoid snapping branches or disturbing the undergrowth. Every so often, she crouched to examine the soil. The human footprints reappeared, faint but unmistakable. They were smaller than hers, delicate yet purposeful, showing no hesitation. Whoever this human was, they were confident and skilled, moving through dangerous terrain as if they had done so countless times before. As she followed the trail, Lyra began to notice other signs. Broken branches bent at precise angles, leaves pressed flat without tearing, faint scratches on tree trunks as though the human had brushed against them. She realized that the person was not merely walking, they were interacting with the environment, moving carefully so as not to disturb it more than necessary. Her admiration grew. Humans, it seemed, were capable of subtlety and precision in ways her species often overlooked. Hours passed, and the forest began to thin. Lyra reached a cliff edge overlooking a wide canyon filled with mist that glowed faintly from the bioluminescent plants below. The human footprints continued, crossing the narrow stone ledge that formed a natural bridge between cliffs. The risk of falling was high, but the footprints remained steady, showing no sign of hesitation. Lyra's heart pounded as she stepped onto the ledge, following the path. One misstep could mean disaster. Yet the human had crossed it as if it were nothing. From her vantage point, Lyra saw movement below in the mist. Small creatures with translucent bodies and multiple legs scuttled across the canyon floor. She knew they were harmless, but their sheer numbers reminded her of the challenges humans faced. Their ability to navigate such dangers, she thought, was remarkable. Lyra made a mental note of their behavior, wondering how humans could adapt to so many environments. The ledge ended at a narrow canyon path that twisted like a spiral staircase. Lyra carefully followed, her eyes constantly scanning for clues. The footprints became more erratic here, occasionally stepping to the side, sometimes pressing more firmly into the rock. Lyra interpreted this as signs of caution, yet the human moved forward without fear. She felt a growing sense of respect for this species, a quiet admiration that she had not allowed herself before. Suddenly, a faint sound reached her ears, a low hum, almost like a vibration in the air. Lyra froze. Her scanners picked up the same pattern, tiny pulses of energy radiating from the canyon walls. The human footprints led directly toward the source. Lyra's curiosity spiked. Whatever was ahead, she knew it was significant. The canyon path opened into a hidden valley, smaller than the one she had first discovered, but filled with strange, glowing flora that seemed almost artificial in arrangement. Some plants formed arches over the path, while others swayed rhythmically, as if reacting to her presence. Lyra's scanners picked up faint chemical traces in the air, compounds she could not identify, yet they seemed linked to the human's energy signature. And then she saw the footprints stop again. This time, there was a slight indentation in the soil where the human had crouched, as if examining something closely. Lyra knelt beside the marks, studying the details. She noticed tiny scratches on the ground that suggested the human had moved something, perhaps a small rock or piece of debris. The energy readings were stronger here, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. Whatever the human was investigating, it required attention and care. Lyra's mind raced with possibilities. Was the human studying the local ecosystem, collecting samples? Or had they discovered something extraordinary, something that required their full focus? She activated her scanners again, sweeping the area for hidden structures or signs of technology. Nothing appeared, only the footprints, the glowing plants, and the faint pulses of energy. Despite the mystery, Lyra felt a thrill of anticipation. She had followed explorers before, had tracked unknown life forms across hostile terrain, but never with such personal connection. This human was clever, cautious, and resilient. Each step they had taken told a story, revealing intelligence and courage in a way no scanner could fully capture. Lyra felt herself drawn forward, compelled by both curiosity and admiration. Hours turned into evening. The alien sky shifted colors, deepening into shades of violet and orange as the twin moons rose. Shadows stretched across the valley, casting strange patterns over the glowing flora. Lyra paused to rest, crouching beside the footprints, her mind replaying every detail of the trail. The human's presence was more than physical. It left an impression, a sense of life that lingered even when the person was gone. She wondered what motivated humans. They were explorers, yes, but why this planet? Why take such risks in an unknown world? Lyra's species often measured achievement by data collected or distance traveled. Humans seemed to value experience itself, a desire to see, to touch, to understand. There was bravery in that, a willingness to face danger simply to know the unknown. As night fell, Lyra set up a small energy field around her position, providing light and warmth without disturbing the environment. She reviewed the trail one more time. The human had disappeared twice now, once at the crystalline pool and again here. Yet she could feel a pattern, a rhythm to the journey. As if the human had a purpose she could sense, but not yet fully understand. Her scanners picked up a faint fluctuation in the energy readings, leading her gaze to a cluster of unusually tall plants at the edge of the valley. Their glow was brighter here, almost like a beacon. The footprints led straight toward them. Lyra took a deep breath, ready to continue, knowing the next step could reveal something extraordinary, or something dangerous. With careful, deliberate steps, she followed the trail once more, moving through the glowing plants. The air grew warmer, carrying a scent of sweet resin she had never encountered. Tiny motes of light floated in the air, drifting past her like miniature stars. The footprints pressed through the soft soil, leading her toward a small rise in the terrain. And then she saw it. A faint shimmer. Barely perceptible in the dim light, hovering just above the ground. Lyra paused, scanning it with every instrument she had. The readings were unlike anything she had encountered, energy patterns that seemed alive, shifting and pulsing in response to the human's presence. Lyra realized that the human had triggered something, some form of natural or technological reaction she could not yet comprehend. Her pulse quickened. She had followed the footprints this far, and now she was on the edge of a discovery that could redefine everything her species believed about humans. Every instinct told her to proceed cautiously, but she could not stop. She had to know what the human had found. Lyra stepped closer to the shimmer, careful not to disturb it. The air hummed softly, vibrating against her skin. She felt a strange warmth, as if the energy was welcoming her rather than threatening. The human footprints led right to it, and for a moment Lyra imagined the human standing here, watching her, curious and calm as she examined the phenomenon. Her mind raced with possibilities. Could this be a natural feature of the planet, a hidden form of energy unknown to science? Or was it something the human had discovered and activated through their actions? Lyra could not know yet, but she understood one thing clearly. Humans were capable of encountering the unknown with courage, intelligence, and respect for life. That alone was extraordinary. Lyra took a final look at the footprints, now leading straight into the shimmer, and felt a surge of anticipation. She had followed the human across strange landscapes, through glowing forests and jagged cliffs, and now she was on the brink of understanding what had caused them to pause. The trail had challenged her senses, her intellect, and her patience, but she had learned more about humans than any record or story could ever convey. The chase was far from over. The human was still out there, somewhere beyond the shimmer, and Lyra knew that each step she took would bring her closer to a discovery that might change everything she knew about life, intelligence, and courage. With a determined breath, she stepped forward, ready to follow the human into the unknown once more. The footprints had led her this far, and they would continue to guide her, but the mysteries ahead were greater than anything she had imagined. Lyra's heart was filled with wonder, respect, and an unshakable determination. She would find the human. She would understand their purpose, and she would learn what it meant to truly explore a world beyond the known. The journey continued, and the chase was only beginning. Lyra paused at the edge of the shimmer, her sensors active and her mind alert. The energy patterns pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat, and she could feel a strange warmth in the air. It was unlike anything she had experienced before. The human footprints led directly into this area, but there was still no sign of the person herself. Lyra's curiosity surged. Something extraordinary had happened here, and she was determined to understand it. She stepped carefully into the shimmer. Her boots made no sound, but the energy around her seemed to respond, rippling like water disturbed by a stone. Lyra scanned everything, the soil, the air, the surrounding plants, and detected faint traces of chemical and thermal activity. The human had been here, she knew it, but the absence of movement puzzled her. It was as if the human had vanished, leaving only the echoes of presence. Lyra crouched beside the last footprint, examining it closely. The soil was disturbed in a peculiar pattern, almost like a small circle had been drawn around it. Her sensors picked up subtle energy fluctuations in the same spot. She realized that the human had interacted with something beyond her understanding. The thought made her pulse quicken. Humans were clever, but this was more than cleverness. It was ingenuity on a level her species rarely encountered. She activated her scanner to map the surrounding area in detail. The shimmer seemed concentrated around a cluster of crystalline plants at the edge of the valley. The readings were strong, almost overwhelming, but not dangerous. Lyra adjusted her instruments to focus on subtle patterns. She noticed faint traces of movement around the crystals, like something had passed through the energy fields without disturbing them entirely. "What is this?" she whispered to herself, though no one could hear. She had never encountered a species that could interact with a planet in such a subtle and precise way. Her mind raced with possibilities. Could humans manipulate energy naturally? Or had they found a way to use technology to harmonize with the environment? Lyra decided to follow the energy traces, hoping they would lead her closer to the human. She moved slowly, crouching to avoid disturbing the plants. Each step brought new surprises. Tiny creatures with transparent shells moved cautiously around her feet, and the air shimmered with faint motes of light. It was beautiful, but Lyra's focus remained on the trail. The human had left a path, subtle but undeniable, and she had to find it. After some distance, The valley opened into a small clearing. The footprints ended here, surrounding a mound of soft soil and glowing crystals. Lyra noticed tiny disturbances in the soil, as if the human had been examining or moving something carefully. She crouched to inspect the site. The crystals hummed faintly, resonating with the energy she had been tracking. There were no tools visible, no signs of artificial devices, only the footprints and the natural energy of the crystals. Lyra frowned. This was more than a simple exploration. The human had stopped here with purpose, interacting with the environment in ways she did not yet understand. She carefully scanned the soil and crystals again, looking for clues. Tiny scratches suggested manipulation, and faint chemical traces indicated the human had handled the crystals or soil. Perhaps the human had discovered something unique, something she could not detect with ordinary instruments. As she studied the area, Lyra noticed a movement at the edge of her vision. A faint shimmer of light, almost invisible, flickered between the trees. Her heart raced. Was it the human, or some other life form, reacting to her presence? She adjusted her scanner and focused on the shimmer. The readings matched the energy signature of the human footprints. She realized with a thrill that she was getting closer. Lyra carefully approached, her steps silent, her senses alert. The shimmer grew stronger, and she could see faint outlines of something moving just beyond the crystals. She crouched behind a large, glowing plant, her eyes fixed on the spot. Then she saw it. A human, small and agile, crouched beside the crystals. The person moved with care, gently pressing on the plants and soil, seemingly communicating with the environment through touch. Lyra watched in awe. The human was intelligent, precise, and patient, capable of interacting with alien life in ways her species had never imagined. She wanted to step forward, to speak, but hesitated. She had been trained to observe without interference, yet every instinct in her body told her that this human was special. The way they moved, the way they adapted, the way they respected the world around them, it was extraordinary. Lyra took out a small recording device, carefully documenting every motion and energy pattern. The human seemed unaware of her presence, focused entirely on the crystals. They adjusted their position, moving in a careful rhythm that suggested study or communication. Lyra realized that this was not just exploration. The human had a purpose, and it was something far beyond what she had expected. Hours passed as she observed. The human worked steadily, creating subtle patterns in the soil, pressing the crystals, and moving with an almost meditative focus. Lyra noticed that the energy readings fluctuated in harmony with the human's actions, as if the person's presence was activating something natural in the crystals. She could not understand fully, but the evidence was clear. Humans were capable of interacting with alien environments in ways that were ingenious, thoughtful, and effective. Finally, the human stood, straightened, and looked toward the sky. Lyra held her breath, unsure whether to reveal herself. The person's eyes scanned the horizon, cautious but calm. Lyra could feel their awareness, their intelligence shining through even from a distance. This was no ordinary creature. It was a human, and it was remarkable in every sense. Suddenly, the human stepped toward a cluster of glowing plants and placed a hand lightly on one of them. The plant responded immediately, bending slightly and glowing brighter. Lyra gasped softly. Humans could manipulate the environment, not through force or tools, but through subtle understanding, observation, and action. This was something her species rarely achieved without technology. Lyra felt a surge of admiration. She had followed the footprints across dangerous terrain, through alien forests and jagged cliffs, and now she was witnessing firsthand the genius of the human mind. Every step, every motion, every interaction spoke of courage, intelligence, and respect for life. The human suddenly paused, looking around as if sensing something. Lyra froze. She did not move a muscle, but the human's gaze seemed to sweep the area, almost touching her presence. Her sensors detected a slight fluctuation in energy, a faint recognition that she was there. The human did not speak, but Lyra could sense curiosity and awareness, qualities that defined their species. After a few moments, the human turned and began moving again, heading toward a small hill beyond the clearing. Lyra followed cautiously, staying hidden but keeping the trail in sight. The footprints resumed, leading up the incline, carefully navigating rocks and plants without hesitation. Lyra realized that the human's journey was purposeful, deliberate, and brave. At the top of the hill, the human stopped abruptly. Lyra approached slowly, trying to understand what had caused the pause. There, she saw it. A natural formation, almost like a doorway carved from stone and crystal, partially hidden by glowing plants. The human examined it carefully, touching the surface, scanning with their eyes, and moving as if communicating with the structure. Lyra's mind raced. Was this natural or artificial? The energy readings suggested something beyond ordinary life, a hidden intelligence, or perhaps a secret waiting to be discovered. Lyra stepped closer, revealing herself slightly, and the human finally looked in her direction. Their eyes met. For a moment, time seemed to pause. Lyra could see intelligence, curiosity, and courage in that gaze. The human did not speak, but there was no fear. Instead, there was mutual recognition, two explorers from different worlds, understanding each other through presence alone. Lyra realized then that this was more than a pursuit. It was a connection between species, a recognition of ingenuity and courage. The human had faced unknown challenges, navigated alien terrain, and discovered something extraordinary, all while moving with respect and purpose. And Lyra, following the footprints, was learning not only about the human, but about the limitless potential of her own understanding. The human stepped toward the hidden formation, and Lyra knew she had to follow. The journey ahead promised more mystery, more discovery, and perhaps answers to the questions she had been asking herself. Humans were more than survivors. They were explorers, thinkers, and problem solvers, capable of engaging with the unknown in ways that inspired awe. Lyra took a deep breath, her heart filled with anticipation. She would continue to follow. She would uncover the purpose behind these footprints, and she would witness the extraordinary mind of a species that her people had long underestimated. The mystery deepened, and the journey was far from over. But Lyra felt certain of one truth. Humans were remarkable, and following them would change everything she thought she knew about life, courage, and intelligence. The footprints led onward, and Lyra was ready. Lyra's heart raced as she crested the small hill. Before her lay a hidden formation, a structure of stone and crystal partially covered by glowing plants. The human she had been following crouched beside it, examining the surface with careful, deliberate movements. Each touch caused a faint vibration, and the crystal patterns responded with a soft light, as if acknowledging the interaction. Lyra took a cautious step closer, careful not to startle the human. Her sensors recorded every detail, the shifts in energy, the way the human's fingers moved over the crystal, the faint imprints of their boots in the soft soil. She had followed the footprints across alien forests, cliffs, and valleys, and now she understood that the human was far more than a survivor. They were an explorer, a thinker, someone who could engage with the unknown in ways her species could only admire. The human paused and lifted their head. Their eyes scanned the hilltop, sharp and observant, but there was no fear in their gaze. Instead, there was calm intelligence and awareness. Lyra held her breath. She had seen clever species before, but never one that combined courage, patience, and respect for life in such a way. Slowly, Lyra revealed herself. She stepped from behind a large crystal stalk, hands raised in a universal gesture of peace. The human did not flinch or retreat. Instead, they studied her carefully, as if measuring whether she was a threat. Lyra felt a surge of respect. Humans, it seemed, did not react with panic. They assessed, adapted, and chose action carefully. Finally, the human spoke, in a language unfamiliar to Lyra, but with clear intention. The tone was calm, almost melodic, and the meaning was unmistakable. Curiosity, not fear. Lyra's translator interpreted the vibrations, rendering them into words she could understand. "Who are you?" the human asked. Their voice carried authority, but also calmness. Lyra lowered her hands and responded in her own language, careful to speak slowly and clearly. "I am Lyra, an explorer from another world. I mean no harm. I have been following your footprints." The human studied her silently for a moment, then nodded. "You followed me carefully." Their eyes scanned her from head to toe. Not many would. Most would be reckless. Lyra felt a surge of admiration. Humans were bold, yes, but this one was clever and cautious as well. "I wanted to understand," she said. "I wanted to see how you navigate this world." The human smiled faintly. "It is not easy, but it can be done. The planet has rules. You must respect them." Their gaze shifted to the crystal formation. "And some things are more alive than they seem." Lyra followed their gaze and studied the crystals again. She realized that the human had discovered a way to communicate with the natural energy of the planet, not with technology, but through understanding, observation, and precise action. The patterns of light and vibration responded to the human's movements in ways that suggested harmony and intelligence. "May I study this with you?" Lyra asked. She was careful to show respect. She wanted to learn, not interfere. The human considered her question, then nodded. "You may, but do not touch, unless necessary. Watch first. Learn the rhythm." Lyra crouched beside the human, careful to stay out of the immediate area of influence. She watched as the human moved their hands slowly over the crystals, adjusting their touch based on the reactions of the formation. Each movement caused subtle changes in the energy field, small pulses of light and warmth that spread through the plants around them. Lyra realized that the human had a natural intuition for interacting with alien environments, a skill her species often lacked. Hours passed as she observed. The human worked steadily, sometimes pausing to study a crystal or adjust their footing. Lyra noticed how carefully the person moved through the plants, leaving minimal impact on the soil. Every action was deliberate, showing not only intelligence but also respect. Humans, she realized, were capable of both exploration and stewardship, curious about the unknown, yet careful not to destroy it. At one point, the human stopped and looked at her. "You are learning fast," they said. "Most do not notice the small signs, the subtle patterns. You have patience." Lyra felt a thrill of pride. "I am learning," she admitted. "You are remarkable. The way you move through this world, it is unlike anything I have seen." The human smiled. "We adapt, we observe, we solve problems. That is how we survive." Their gaze returned to the crystals. "And sometimes the world teaches us things we cannot imagine. You have followed my footprints, yes, but now you must see beyond them." Lyra watched carefully as the human activated a subtle sequence of movements. Their hands traced a pattern in the soil, then hovered over the crystals, causing the energy to shift in harmony. Light flowed through the formations like a gentle river, and the air vibrated with faint melodic tones. Lyra realized that the human had discovered a natural mechanism of communication or power, something that existed within the planet itself, waiting to be understood. "This is incredible," Lyra whispered. She had expected signs of life, perhaps clever adaptation, but this was something extraordinary. The human had unlocked a connection between living energy and intelligent action, something her species rarely achieved without technology. The human looked at her again. You see? Understanding is more than scanning or measuring. It is patience, observation, and respect. The world will respond if you listen. Lyra nodded. She understood now that the human's journey was not just survival or exploration, it was discovery and harmony, a combination of intelligence and empathy. She had been following footprints, yes, but she was witnessing true ingenuity in action. Suddenly, a movement caught Lyra's attention. A creature, larger and more intimidating than any they had seen before, approached from the edge of the valley. Its translucent body shimmered, and it moved with surprising speed. Lyra tensed, ready to react, but the human remained calm. They did not flee. They did not panic. Instead, the human extended a hand slowly toward the creature. Lyra watched in awe. The creature paused, its many eyes fixed on the human. A tense moment passed, then it retreated slightly, circling around the formation but not attacking. The human's calm demeanor. Their careful and respectful action had communicated peace. Lyra realized that humans could influence not only the environment but also other life forms through observation, respect, and intelligence. The threat passed. Lyra exhaled slowly, her admiration growing. Humans were not merely survivors. They were negotiators, thinkers, and problem solvers, capable of navigating danger with ingenuity and courage. The human turned back to the crystals. The world has tests, they said. Some are obvious, some are hidden. You have seen how we move through them. You have seen patience, observation, and respect. That is how we survive and thrive. Lyra nodded. She had followed the footprints for days, through forests, cliffs, and valleys, and now she understood the truth. Humans were remarkable, capable of extraordinary things with intelligence, courage, and harmony. You have learned much, the human said, their eyes kind. But there is more. The planet holds secrets that even we cannot yet imagine. Follow carefully, observe, and respect. That is the way forward. Lyra smiled. She was ready. She had been chasing the footprints, watching, learning, and now she was part of the journey. The human had revealed a new perspective, not just of survival, but of understanding, creativity, and intelligence. Together, they moved toward the next part of the valley, the footprints continuing into the unknown. Lyra felt anticipation and excitement. Each step promised discovery, challenges, and lessons. The human led the way, and she would follow, learning from every action, every decision, every subtle movement. For the first time, Lyra felt that she was not just an observer. She was a witness to something extraordinary. Humans, she realized, were a species capable of remarkable achievement, ingenuity, and respect for life. And she had the privilege of learning from them, following their footsteps into a world full of mysteries waiting to be uncovered. The journey continued, and the mysteries deepened. Lyra knew that the next steps would reveal even more, new challenges, new insights, and perhaps answers to the questions she had carried across the alien terrain. She felt a profound sense of awe and admiration. Humans had walked this path before her, and now she was following not just footprints, but the mark of a species that dared to explore the unknown with courage, intelligence, and respect. The encounter had changed everything. Lyra's perspective of humans, of exploration, and of intelligence was forever transformed. The journey was far from over, but she had learned the first great lesson. Humans were extraordinary, and following them would teach her more than any scanner or database ever could. Lyra followed the human through the glowing valley, her eyes wide with wonder. Every step revealed new surprises, strange crystal formations, energy patterns in the soil, and tiny creatures that moved in harmony with the environment. The human moved with confidence, yet with care, leaving minimal impact on the alien world. Lyra realized that every movement was purposeful, a balance between exploration and respect. The footprints led to a small plateau at the center of the valley. Here, the crystals formed an almost perfect circle, rising like pillars around a central pool of water that shimmered with every color imaginable. The energy readings from her scanners spiked dramatically, creating patterns she had never seen. The human stopped at the edge of the pool, crouched down, and touched the water gently. The surface responded immediately, sending ripples of light that danced across the crystal pillars. Lyra crouched beside the human, studying the reaction. She could feel the energy as if it were alive, pulsing gently in rhythm with the human's movements. The pattern was beautiful, precise, and full of intelligence. She realized that the human had discovered a natural form of communication with the planet itself, a method of interacting with energy that required patience, observation, and understanding. "You are seeing it," the human said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. "The planet has a language. Not words, not numbers. A rhythm. Energy flows, patterns shift, and life responds. You must listen carefully to understand." Lyra nodded, her mind racing. She had seen humans adapt, survive, and communicate with their environment in clever ways before, but this was on another level entirely. They were not merely surviving, they were learning, connecting, and harmonizing with the world around them. The human's hands moved in a precise sequence, pressing the water and touching the crystals. Lyra's sensors recorded everything, but she realized that no instrument could truly capture what was happening. The interaction was more than science. It was art, intuition, and understanding combined. The pool glowed brighter, the crystals hummed, and tiny motes of light swirled through the air like a living constellation. Lyra's admiration grew. Humans were capable of intelligence, creativity, and respect, all in perfect balance. They did not dominate. They understood. They did not destroy. They harmonized. She had followed the footprints across alien landscapes, through forests, cliffs, and valleys, and now she saw the true depth of their ingenuity. Suddenly, the human paused. Their gaze shifted toward the far edge of the plateau. A shadow moved among the crystal pillars, and Lyra instinctively prepared herself. But it was not a threat. A group of small, glowing creatures emerged, surrounding the pool and circling the human carefully. They were curious, cautious, and entirely non-aggressive. The human remained calm, allowing the creatures to approach and interact naturally. Lyra realized that humans could influence not only the environment, but also other life forms. Not through fear or force, but through observation, patience, and respect. The creatures responded to the human's presence, their movements synchronized with the energy of the planet and the rhythm of the human's actions. It was a moment of harmony, a demonstration of how humans could thrive in even the most alien worlds without harm. "You see now," the human said, looking at Lyra with a gentle smile. "This is why we explore. Not to conquer, not to claim, but to understand, to learn, to find harmony in the unknown." Lyra nodded, her heart swelling with admiration. She had followed footprints for days, wondering about the human's purpose, and now she understood. Humans were not just explorers. They were bridges between worlds, capable of connecting with life in ways her species had not imagined. The human stood and gestured toward the central pool. "The footprints you followed, they are more than a path. They are a guide. Each step we take, each observation we make, leaves a mark on the world. We learn, we adapt, and we pass knowledge forward. That is our strength." Lyra listened intently. She realized that the footprints were not merely physical. They represented intelligence, courage, and wisdom. Each mark told a story of adaptation, creativity, and problem-solving. She had been chasing a mystery, but the mystery was not about the human alone. It was about what humans represented, the ability to navigate the unknown with ingenuity, respect, and understanding. The human knelt beside the pool again, touching the water lightly. The glow intensified, and a soft, melodic hum filled the air. Lyra felt the energy wash over her, subtle but powerful. It was not dangerous, it was enlightening. She realized that humans could interact with life and energy in ways that were both profound and beautiful. "They will learn from this," the human said quietly, speaking to Lyra and perhaps to themselves. "Other species, other explorers, they will see what can be achieved when curiosity meets respect, when courage meets intelligence." Lyra's chest swelled with pride, not for herself but for humanity. She had seen courage, cleverness, and perseverance embodied in a single individual, and she understood now why humans were capable of greatness. They did not wait for opportunities, they created them. They did not fear the unknown, they engaged it. The human turned toward her. "You followed our footprints with patience and care. You observed, you learned. That is the way forward. Every step we take leaves a mark, and every mark carries knowledge. That is how we grow, how we survive, how we thrive." Lyra smiled, feeling a deep sense of connection. The journey had started with footprints in the soil, small signs of presence and resilience. But it had grown into something greater, a revelation of human potential, of intelligence, creativity, and respect for life. She realized that she would carry this understanding back to her species, sharing the story of humans not as weak or primitive, but as remarkable explorers and problem solvers. The human gestured toward the horizon. "There is more to see, more to learn, but you must remember, respect the world, respect life, and listen. The universe has lessons for those who are willing to understand." Lyra nodded, her mind racing with excitement. She had followed the footprints across alien lands, through challenges and mysteries, and now she had learned the greatest lesson of all. Humans were extraordinary. They could survive, adapt, and harmonize with the unknown. They could solve problems others would never attempt, and they could inspire awe through intelligence, courage, and respect. Together, Lyra and the human moved forward, stepping carefully through the glowing valley. Each footprint left a mark, not just in the soil, but in knowledge, in energy, and in understanding. Lyra realized that this journey was not just about exploration. It was about connection, about learning from one another, and about discovering the limitless potential of life itself. As the sun of the alien world dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the crystal pillars, Lyra paused and looked at the human beside her. The footprints, the journey, the discoveries, they had all led to this moment of revelation. Humans were not merely survivors, they were creators, explorers, and bridges between worlds. And for the first time, Lyra understood why her species had underestimated them for so long. Humans were more than clever or adaptable. They were visionaries, capable of facing the unknown with intelligence, courage, and harmony. The footprints had guided her to this truth, and she would never forget it. The human looked at her and smiled, their eyes reflecting the glow of the crystals. "The journey does not end here," they said. "There are more worlds, more mysteries, and footprints yet to leave." Lyra smiled in return, feeling a sense of purpose and hope. She had followed the footprints, yes, but in doing so she had discovered the true nature of humanity. She had witnessed courage, intelligence, and respect in action. She had learned that exploration was more than survival. It was understanding, harmony, and growth. The footprints continued, and so did the journey. But Lyra knew that the path she had walked, guided by humans, had changed her forever. She had followed the humans' footprints, and through them, she had discovered the extraordinary potential of an entire species. The stars above shone brightly, the alien world pulsed with energy, and the two explorers moved forward together, leaving footprints of courage, intelligence, and hope for all who would follow. Lyra felt a profound truth settle in her heart. Humans were remarkable, and the universe had only begun to witness what they could achieve. She had followed the footprints, and they had led her to a revelation that would inspire her species for generations to come. The journey was far from over, but the discovery was complete. Humanity had shown its strength, ingenuity, and wisdom, and Lyra had been there to witness it.